GBNews.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GBNews Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The eastbound M8 is restricted between junctions 26 and 15A due to an incident. Expect delays. The M4 eastbound near Hendy is closed for maintenance, with diversions. A collision on the M4 westbound in Windsor between junctions 7 and 8 closes 2 lanes, causing 20-minute delays. A vehicle fire on the M6 northbound in Warwickshire between junctions 3A and 4 causes significant delays. And on the trains, there are delays on the Elizabeth line between Romford and Stratford and disruptions on the Great Western Railway to and from Portsmouth Harbour. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GBNews Traffic and Travel Report.
It's the final week to see how you can win big, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? The holiday of a lifetime? Or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? Lines close on the 1st of August, so make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, welcome to Farage with me, Alex Armstrong. But just because Nigel's not here doesn't mean I won't be taking the establishment to town tonight. I've got the former architect of that online safety bill coming on the show, so stay tuned for that, because backlash is growing against that government safety bill, with many accusing the government of censorship. The regulator Ofcom is now investigating pornography websites who are failing to implement age checks. So is it time for the government to reconsider? And fresh protests broke out last night, this time in Waterlooville in Hampshire, after government plans to house asylum seekers in brand new high street flats was revealed. I'll be joined by a local councillor who's fighting to make sure those proposals do not go ahead. And US President Donald Trump today celebrated what he's called is a victory over woke in the US education sector. That's as another Ivy League university agreed to align with his administration's views on transgender athletes and DEI. I'll be joined by an alumni of this college who's also a famous Democrat commentator who is going to be raging at Donald Trump. That's going to be one to watch. And I'll also be joined by a pub landlady who has been a victim of lawless Britain, after a family of 10 dined at her pub before barging their way out and refusing to pay their hefty bill. Well, before all of that now, it's time for your news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Alex. Very good evening to you. Just after 7 o'clock, our headlines. Donald Trump's Middle East envoy will visit Gaza on Friday following what the White House has described as a productive meeting with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Steve Witkoff will inspect aid distribution hubs run by a US-backed company following weeks of chaotic scenes in and around the sites, with numerous aid agencies reporting unfolding famine. The Hamas-run health ministry says 91 people have been killed seeking aid since Wednesday. Meanwhile, the government has dismissed criticism that its plan to recognise a Palestinian state does not involve firm conditions being placed on Hamas. Cabinet Minister Jonathan Reynolds says the UK doesn't negotiate with terror organisations.
Our requests that all hostages must be released and that Hamas can play no future role in the governance of Gaza or a Palestinian state are long-standing. Now, we don't negotiate with terrorists, and Hamas are terrorists, and that's why we don't get into a to and fro with them as to what we want them to do. That's absolute in terms of our requests. What we are seeking to do is use the moment of recognition of a Palestinian state in a way that allows us to genuinely try and move this conflict forward, end it not just in the short term, but for the long term as well.
A 76-year-old man's been arrested on suspicion of administering poison after 8 children fell ill at a summer camp in Leicestershire. Police were called to the village of Stathurn on Sunday. Paramedics assessed the children, who were taken to hospital as a precaution before being discharged. The suspect remains in custody, and the police watchdog has confirmed it's investigating the force's handling of the incident. 2 brothers accused of assaulting a police officer at Manchester Airport will face a retrial next April. Mohammed Fahir Amaz, on the right, was found guilty on Wednesday of assaulting a member of the public and 2 female police officers. The jury couldn't reach a verdict on allegations that he and his brother, Mohammed Ahmad, assaulted PC Zachary Morrison, causing actual bodily harm. Conor McGregor's lost his appeal against a civil jury's finding that he sexually assaulted a woman in 2018. Dublin's High Court found in November the MMA fighter was liable for raping Nikita Hand, awarding her damages of £216,000 and ordering him to pay legal fees of £1.1 million. Mr McGregor had intended to introduce fresh evidence into his appeal to give an alternative explanation for the bruises suffered by Miss Hand, but withdrew his application without explanation as the case began. Meanwhile, a man charged with stabbing a police officer in Dublin city centre earlier this week has been remanded in custody. 23-year-old Abdullah Khan appeared in court accused of an unprovoked knife attack against a Garda on patrol. The policeman was treated in hospital before being discharged on Tuesday evening. Khan has been charged with 2 offences. Finally, Mohammed has once again topped the list of baby boy names in England and Wales, the second year running at number 1. The name was most popular in 4 out of 9 English regions. That's according to figures from the Office for National Statistics. Noah came in second, followed by Oliver. Olivia kept the crown for girls for a 7th straight year, ahead of other names like Amelia, Lily and Isla. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more at 8 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Farage with me, Alex Armstrong. Well, fresh protests erupted in Hampshire last night after an alleged secret plot to move asylum seekers into brand new flats was revealed. The local authority said it had not been initially consulted on plans to use £250,000 high street apartments to house migrants after communication difficulties with Clear Springs, a procurement company employed by the Home Office for the project. Well, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman labelled the proposals utterly inappropriate and said she was very proud of the over 1,000 locals who took to the streets to protest peacefully yesterday evening. A Home Office consultation ends on Friday, after which it will decide whether to approve the proposed accommodation. Well, joining me now to discuss this is leader of Waterloo Conservatives, Councillor Gwen Robinson. Councillor Gwen, thank you very much for joining me. Give us a little bit of a taste as to what it's taken to get over 1,000 people to peacefully protest what many will see as the establishment stepping in on the toes of local people.
I think first and foremost, it was actually just letting people know what was planned. I mean, I'm still asking the question, at what point would residents have been told if, you know, that this was going to happen, if Suella and I hadn't raised public awareness of it? And to be honest, Alex, channels such as yours, GB News, you know, keep people really up to speed with what's going on across the country. And I think people thought, no, you know, the organiser put it together, assured me it would be peaceful, and it was. And people decided to come out in their droves and really make their voices heard.
Yes, Gwen, this is an issue we're seeing, of course, up and down the country here. What on earth were the government thinking, not even consulting with the local council before making this decision? Is there a disconnect, a massive disconnect between local government and national government?
Well, apparently the person that they contacted, Clear Springs contacted, had left the council. So I asked, well, surely if he'd left, then his email would have been shut down and it would have bounced back to Clear Springs. So, you know, maybe that question needs to be asked of Clear Springs. Did it bounce back, or did they just not get a response? They then handed it over to the Home Office for adjudication, and then the Home Office decided, well, obviously the council have not responded. I have to say, I think the Home Office also have to hold their hands up and say that they should not have been satisfied with that response from Clear Springs. I mean,
it's just one message, isn't it, Gwen? It's one message.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of all the people they could have contacted, every councillor, the local MP, and they still didn't bother to try again. It almost felt like they thought, oh, job done, we can just go ahead with this without telling anybody. That's the impression I get, Gwen.
And that is exactly what they did. And apparently, so I was told by the Home Office, that if the number is below 100, they don't have to contact the MP. Now, to my mind, whether it's 10 or 100, the MP, in our case it's Suella Braverman, should have been contacted and notified that this was being planned in her constituency. So, you know, yes, there's been obviously errors made, but again, I felt that it was right with Suella that, you know, we let the residents know what was intended for our high street.
Yes, absolutely, Gwen. And we're seeing the pictures there of the over 1,000 people that showed up to protest there, very peacefully, very, very peaceful, which is always good to see. What do you think? Do you think this protest will have any impact on the government's decision? Because at the end of the day, the government are going to have to look at other towns now where these migrants maybe move somewhere else. You know, are we just moving the problem around, Gwen?
Well, I have been given the chance as a ward councillor to add to the consultation. I've spent a long time and I've put my deputation together and I've put it forward. And I have acknowledged that there is pressure, but I've also said that surely the priority should be choosing locations that are more suitable. You know, going in, you know, dropping 35 people into the middle of Waterlooville town centre, that is not a suitable location. You know, these people, they'll come, you know, they're not able to work because they don't have the right to work or anything like that. What are these people going to do? They are going to hang around the town centre, and I can only see that that will have an incredibly negative impact on all the hard work that the regeneration team at Havant Borough Council have put into the town centre. You know, it was in decline, and then in 23 we decided to, you know, get some investment, and then we had a private company come in as well. So it is on the up. I can only see that this is going to drag it back down again.
Yes, and Gwen, of course, you know, Waterlooville won't be the only town across the country experiencing this at the moment. It's disgraceful that £250,000 flats, brand new flats, are being given away to people who've barely been in the country, let alone the fact that the government weren't communicating very well with you, at least. What would you like to see change, at least for those other parts of the country that might be experiencing similar things? What does the government need to do if they're at least going to get something sorted on this very, very critical issue?
Right, this issue is going to go on for years. We know that. We've been told that. We know that. Now, you could say that isn't it about time that all parties work together on this? Because this was an issue, for the Conservative government. It's an issue now. It will be an issue in 29 for whoever comes in then. So, but unfortunately, because all the parties have a very different view on how this should be handled. So, for example, the Conservatives had a Rwanda scheme. They believe that we do need to deport them. And talking to a lot of people, they actually agree with that. I think Reform believe the same. But of course, then you've got the Labour and the Lib Dems, probably Greens, I don't know, not quite so much on them. Their thing is, well, let's smash the gangs. Well, we can't smash drug gangs. So, and we've been trying that for decades, haven't we?
Yeah.
So how on earth are we going to, smash these gangs? They're organised, they're organised gangs. As one falls, another one will pop up.
Exactly.
So,
it's a billion dollar industry, Gwen. They're just going to keep on. That's my opinion. They're just going to keep on coming.
Yes, they will.
What would you like to see improve about the way that government communicate with councils on this? Because, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems we've had here is that you lot didn't even know about it. You weren't even informed, or at least the attempts to communicate with you were abysmal.
They really were. They really were bad. I mean, Clear Springs, I'm told, one of their tricks is, they say they've tried to make contact. Now, they tried to make contact with somebody in procurement. Now, I know their role is to procure for the Home Office. So I found that a little bit lame. We'll go to procurement. I mean, I do agree with our chief exec that on something as important as this, they should have actually contacted the chief exec or the executive head for housing. Now, those two people one of those should have been contacted. So I think the Home Office need to seriously look at Clear Springs, maybe Serco, and I know there's another group that they use. So I think they need to take some responsibility here. Now, I think you asked me a moment ago, Alex, do I feel that, the good people of Waterlooville in their peaceful protest, it's going to make any difference? I'm not that confident, because I know that June, July and August are the 3 months when there's a huge increase in the number of migrants coming across. I think it was 900, was it yesterday? Now,
yes,
those people have got to go somewhere. So for that reason, even though I have argued that location is not suitable, I wouldn't...
You're not hopeful? Gwen, I understand. I think you are probably somebody that is a feeling that is shared across the country. At least local politicians don't feel like the government will listen to them, even if they hold thousands of peaceful protests. But there we go. Councillor Gwen Robinson, their leader of Waterloo Conservatives, thank you very much for joining me. And just off the back, on the same story here, I'm now joined by Director of Sanctuary Foundation, Krish Kandia. Krish, I hope I haven't butchered your last name. I do apologise if I have. Krish, so look... of course, you can see there is a lot of unrest in the country. Most of it has been peaceful so far, but we're looking at Epping, Waterlooville, other parts of Britain where it's like a powder keg waiting to explode because local people feel hard done by. £250,000 brand new flats given away to people who've just landed when there's housing lists for sometimes in some places decades long. Can you understand? Do you agree that people are unhappy with what's going on here?
Hi, Alex. Yeah, I think I understand that people are upset. And they're upset that there are enough houses. They're upset that there's a cost of living crisis. And those are really understandable concerns. But it feels like they're taking their anger out on a very vulnerable group of people. These are people that have fled war and terror. And now they've got a crowd of 1,000 people protesting outside the place that they're supposed to be coming to live. Or if you're in Epping, outside the hotel that you're in.
Yes, I totally appreciate that. The vast majority of people that come here, of course, aren't criminals, but many people feel like they can't get their voices heard. They voted election after election, decade after decade, to lower net migration. That's one issue alone. Nobody ever voted for this crisis to continue with illegal migration, and they're asking the government to take action. We've seen that Smash the Gangs clearly isn't working, Krish. We have record numbers coming over the channel now, and I think people feel, well, what else can I do other than protest at the place I know the government have assigned to this building? I mean, what advice would you give people if they do want to protest this in that case?
Go and visit parks. Parliament. There are lots of places you can walk into the lobby in Parliament and demand to speak to your MP on most days of the week. So there are definitely better ways to protest. I mean, I think it's all about the story that we tell. People have been told that the reason that there isn't enough housing, or the reason that there's a cost of living crisis, or the reason there's a queue at the NHS is because of all these immigrants. Well, that's just not true. Many of us made room in our homes for immigrants from Ukraine. I've got my little Ukraine badge on because we know what it's like to step up and offer help to people in need. Being British, I can see on your pictures, you've got some beautiful St George's cross, a beautiful flag. I was wrapped in a St George's flag this week when we were cheering on the Lionesses. And the Lionesses, guess what? Full of immigrants that come and make a contribution to our society. We don't need to fear immigrants, we need to embrace them.
But I think when we separate the issue here onto...
that the problems is all due to immigration. I think that's really unhelpful.
But Chris, when we look at the illegal migration problem, when we look at this problem that has just gone on and on and on, is getting worse and worse, and government after government has told us they're going to solve it. And now what's happening is, in some cases, there are dangerous people going into those local areas. Of course, I believe they should protest in their local areas because it's a local issue. What the left do is they organise national protests, they ship and bus people around the country and then block Parliament and places like that. And those are completely ineffective because politicians don't listen. But when it happens in your hometown, these aren't organised right-wingers. These are just local people who've had enough and said, not in my turf. And so I disagree with your sentiment on where they should protest. But when we talk about this being a problem, it's the biggest crisis facing this country now. It's the top issue on every part in the country.
Alex.
But regardless of whether it's being made that, it's what people feel. And I think the sentiment here, Krish, is that people at home just don't feel like anybody is listening to them. When the Prime Minister sometimes gets up on his podium, he's called them far right before for simply having an opinion on illegal migration. And I think that perhaps the rhetoric has boiled over on people. Do we hold politicians responsible for this?
Look, I think there's a lot of people that are to blame for this, but illegal migration, as you call it, or asylum seeking, as I call it, is just 4% of net migration. So we're focusing all our attention on a very small group of people, and we're blaming them for all the problems in our society. And that's why you get 1,000 people out on the street. Look, I want to solve the problems that they actually have, which is let's get better housing, let's get jobs going. Don't blame the immigrants. We can be a nation of neighbours. Look, one of my favourite and most British characters is Paddington Bear. Paddington Bear is an unaccompanied asylum-seeking bear, and yet he represents something beautiful about our nation. But instead, we're whipping people up to blame immigrants for all of our problems. And I think that is the powder keg. That's really unhelpful.
Yeah, Krish, thank you for joining me, by the way. I do feel that when we look at the amount of people, we've got record numbers today. 700,000 people we found out the other year it came in 22-23. Huge numbers of people entering the country. Of course, it's putting pressure on every single service, from the NHS to doctors to schools to homes. How on earth can this country survive when that is happening year after year? Anyway, moving on. The government has said the government is reducing expensive hotel use as part of a complete overhaul of the asylum system, from over 400 asylum hotels opened in the summer 2023, costing almost $9 million a day. There are now less than 210 of them, and we want them all closed by the end of this Parliament. We will continue to work closely with the police and community partners across the country and discuss any concerns they have. Of course, the security of the local communities within which hotels are located will always be our first priority. Well, coming up, have I got an interview for you. As backlash grows against the government's online safety bill, the regulator Ofcom is now investigating pornography websites who are failing to implement age checks. Have the government's plans already failed? This is Farage with me, Alex Armstrong, only on GB News. Stay with us.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Alex Armstrong. Before we move on, I just want to read a couple of the comments out here. Lady Anne has said, we can blame anyone we want. This is in regards to the illegal hotel, illegal migrants into hotels, situation homes. We can blame anyone we want, she says. Illegal migrants are not Paddington Bear. I couldn't agree more. I hate all this nonsense comparisons to fictional characters. This is a real crisis facing our country, and we have to have sensible conversations. And British people have just been ignored for too long by an establishment who doesn't want to do anything about it. Anyway, there we go. Moving on. Ofcom has launched an investigation into how 34 pornography websites are complying with new age check requirements following the introduction of the online safety bill. Well, since the bill has taken effect, 5 million extra online age checks a day are being carried out in the UK, according to new data, whilst the downloading of VPNs has also surged. 4 of the top 5 free apps on Apple's download store in the UK are virtual private network apps. And most popular, Proton has reported a 1,800% increase in downloads. Well, Ofcom prioritises companies based on the risk of harm posed by the services they operate and their user numbers, and can eventually impose fines of up to £18 million. Well, this has been a very big topic this week, and I'm very delighted to say I'm joined now by former Culture Secretary Michelle Donnellan. Michelle, of course, you wrote this bill, you carried this through Parliament. The backlash to this bill has been pretty intense this week. It's been a long time coming. Would you, if you were still in government today, still support this bill?
So first of all, I inherited the bill and then completely rewrote it because the state I got it was something that really did stifle free speech. So, for instance, there was a clause called legal but harmful where the government could just make up stuff that wasn't illegal, but it was going to restrict online. We got rid of all of that and put in protections for free speech. I think what you're seeing happen in the last few days is a dog's dinner, and that is because of the implementation of this piece of legislation. This government have been in for over a year now. What they should have been doing is concentrating, working with big tech, also working with the regulator to make sure that they were ready for the live switch on and that everybody had got their ducks in a row. And that's why we've seen a number of instances, including restricting children from seeing stuff that is absolutely fine, like seeing protests, etc.
Yes, but Michelle, do you not see the problem here? The way the bill was written, without actually looking into whether they can be overridden by a simple virtual private network, a VPN. I want to ask you, do you understand how a VPN works, Michelle?
Well, yes, I do understand how a VPN works, and that's not true as to the case of how.
Go on, tell me. Why don't you tell me? How does a VPN work, Michelle?
Let me finish. Let me get a word in edgeways. So the problem that you're outlining is that people, and in particular, it's assumed that children, are finding a way around the legislation by getting a VPN so that they're coming up as though they are not potentially in the country, and therefore they're being able to access stuff that is maybe not age appropriate. Now, there are a number of responses to this. First of all, there are always going to be ways around legislation and rules. That doesn't mean that you just stop and you give up. If that was the case, we wouldn't put railings on cliffs because we could say kids could climb over them. And secondly, it is our job, it was the government's job to make sure that it is on top of the regulator and on top of tech companies to continually improve and find ways around. And if tech companies were relying more on age estimation and verification tools rather than crude geo-blockers and geo-assessments, then you wouldn't have this issue as bad as it is presenting. And look, there are always going to be teething problems when a new legislation comes in, when it's regulating an area that's completely been unregulated before. But the teething problems we've been seeing in the last few days are far too big, because what you're seeing happen is you're seeing tech lurch to the cheapest, quickest way of complying with the legislation, which was always going to happen if you didn't have a regulator that was completely on the ball and you didn't have a government that appreciated and respected free speech. And let's face it, this isn't a government that does that.
Yes, look, I still want to know whether you know how a VPN works, Michelle, because I think many people will ask this question: are MPs technologically illiterate when it comes to this? Because this all stuff sounds great. We want to protect children. We care about safety. But when it comes at the risk of mass censorship of even Katie Lamb, one of your own front bench MPs in your shadow cabinet, having her stuff censored on X, there's clearly issues. And we're talking about Ofcom. Well, why didn't you get Ofcom in a position when you were in government to actually implement this bill correctly? Because you had years you were working on it. It's not like it happened overnight. Labour have only been in government for 1 year.
Right, let's pedal back a bit, because some of that stuff is not really quite fair, as you know, Alex. So Labour have been in power for over a year now. It became, it got royal assent not that long before the last election, actually. And what we'd done before that is we had got Ofcom in a good place, because they'd already had the money before the bill had even passed. They were upskilling, they'd got some staff in, they were, etc. But we all know that Ofcom is far too big and is a massive mini conglomerate in essence. It shouldn't be having all of these hats, but it has. So therefore,
why not remove them then? You were the Culture Secretary, Michelle. Why didn't you remove some of them while you were in office?
I wasn't Prime Minister, Alex. I would have broken it up in a heartbeat.
So the problem lied with Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak?
I pitched it regularly to various Prime Ministers that it needed breaking up. And if I was ever given the opportunity again to be in office, I would certainly be once again pitching it. But you've got to deal with what you've got to deal with. This Secretary of State that we've got now, instead of making cheap jibes at Nigel Farage, etc., should be focusing on actually dealing with this legislation, making sure that it's implemented in the correct way. The majority of the things that you've been seeing, the incidences that you've been seeing, what they are is that they are questioning how old a person is. So they're coming up with that message saying this content is blocked until you've verified your age. So the person then has to verify their age. Now, that is to protect children. Where it's gone overboard is that it is asking people for their age on content that is absolutely fine for children to see. We don't want to censor our kids. They're about to get the vote as well, which is another ridiculous story in my mind, but that is happening. And so they've got to be educated on politics and different topics. What we do want to do, though, is protect our kids from paedophiles, from seeing pornography that is not appropriate for them to see, far too early, and from the horrendous increase that we've seen in suicide, which is linked to online information. And I've sat down with a number of these bereaved families, including Molly Russell's family, and their stories are heartbreaking. We can't carry on digging our heads in the sand and just ignoring it.
Michelle, listen, I agree, and nobody wants to see children come to any harm. But I think when we look at the consequences this bill is having, and you can blame the Labour Party if you want, I think you're both culpable for not getting Ofcom into the right position, or having Ofcom even being the regulator in charge of this, I think is ridiculous. What's happening is mass censorship of the wider population, just to appease what unfortunately would be some tragic small cases, which no one wants to see. But where does this end? Is it constantly giving up constantly giving up your privacy for safety's sake? And it's the vast majority of people on the internet are safe. Vast majority of people on the internet don't need these restrictions. And what we've done is hand big tech, all of our data. They're asking for our 3D face scans. We're giving them biometric data into the most powerful people's hands.
So they're not asking for everybody's face data. So let's not exaggerate the situation. Let's stick with...
In many cases they are. In fact, Michelle, this policy has gone global. We've got some pictures here of Spotify. He's now rolled this out internationally thanks to this bill. Well, they're going to shut down anyone One's account was Spotify, it doesn't age verify. Here we go.
Let me come back to some of your points, because I really think it is key that I do. So there are a number of countries that are taking action when it comes to online safety in various different guises, because they recognise it's important to protect children. It's not true to say that this Act, now I'm not talking about the implementation, I'm talking about the Act in its actual pure form, censors adults. In fact, it doesn't. And I made clear it didn't, because I took out legal but harmful. Well, let me finish, Alex. I took out legal but harmful. I added a free speech clause into this piece of legislation. I added a proportionality clause as well. That means that if these social media companies are over censoring stuff, actually the regulator has the teeth to act. So this is an implementation problem. If you read the Act, it isn't the problem of the Act.
Yes, I'm sure you're right, Michelle.
Line by line, Alex.
I'm sure you're right. How on earth did you think Ofcom was going to go up against the likes of Apple, Meta, Facebook, X, and the biggest companies in the world? A small British regulator taking on these behemoths. All they have done. And you said there wasn't mass censorship of people. They said there's not censoring ours. I've got examples here on my laptop of people who've had their content censored. I included one of them being one of your colleagues in the shadow cabinet in the Conservative Party. I think it's absolutely preposterous. This bill has become a monster. It is now forcing companies to be over-censorious because of Ofcom, and they're scared of the fines, they're scared of some of their colleagues ending up in prison because of what people online post. And quite frankly, the technology you think is there isn't there for this bill to be effective. What's happened is you've given power to artificial intelligence to make decisions on what should be censored on an algorithm, not a human being. Do you understand that? Do politicians understand you've just given AI more control over what we see?
Well, firstly, I'm not a politician. I'm a mum that lives in Wiltshire now, as of last year.
Former politician, I beg your pardon.
Irregardless of that. So what you're talking about when you say censorship is actually having to put your details in. So you're objecting fundamentally, and I understand why, because of privacy and data. But ultimately, there is a bit of a trade-off, which we have to be honest about. You know, you cannot protect children and ensure that a 6-year-old isn't getting onto TikTok or to Facebook unless you know that that kid is 6 years old. So first of all, they try and use age estimation tools, which are looking at their patterns of behaviour and their accounts. And if there's a doubt, then they have to ask for hard verification. Now, that's just a simple fact, because there is no way around that. As technology improves, it will get easier and better, and it will ask less people for hard verification. Now, a number of people are objecting because we've also included pornography into this. But we also have to remember that the average age that a child sees pornography in this country is 13 years old. And that is causing massive problems, both in terms of relationships, in terms of addiction, and the way that young boys view girls. Now, these are real problems that we're facing in modern Britain. We can't just ignore them. And as I've just
Michelle, can I just make one point very briefly? Because I've worked in the technology sector. I worked 10 years, a decade in technology. I understand very, very well how most machines work. On your phone, if you're a responsible parent, you can restrict almost everything on an iPhone. You can stop them accessing the internet, end of. So why have we gone overboard and decided that we need to roll this out to every single person in the country instead of actually doubling down on the tools that were already available to people?
Yeah, so I think you might find, Alex, that every parent in the country is just throwing something at the TV at your face now, because what I heard time and time again from parents is it's really, really confusing. There's different controls from different providers. It can take time.
It's really not. It's really easy, Michelle. I did it last night as a demonstration. It takes 3 minutes. And regardless of that, but Michelle, you could have educated the public on how to do this. You could have spent the billions of pounds that are wasted on this, educating the public on how to control their children's machines better, or just ban smartphones for under 18s.
Yeah, but Alex, you started this conversation by saying basically kids can get around it. So why are you doing it?
Of course they can.
Kids can get around those parental controls too.
Sure. No, they can't. Well, that's actually not how that works. But more importantly, why didn't you just ban smartphones for under 18s if you're so worried about this?
Well, I don't think banning is the way to go, because actually a smartphone is really useful. It's useful from a parent, from knowing where your kid is and having those kind of features. It's also great as a learning tool. You know, when I was growing up, we had we had encyclopedias to do our homework. Okay. Now you have Google. These are important tools, and we live in the real world. We shouldn't be sheltering our kids from the world.
Michelle, before you go, just very simply, can you tell me how a virtual private network works?
Well, as I outlined before, if you have a VPN on your screen, on your computer, then when you're logging into a social media account like Facebook, like TikTok, etc., it will not be able to locate you as a citizen of the United Kingdom. Therefore, you will be able to bypass the controls. That was why I was saying it needs to be broader than just looking at the geography.
OK, listen, Michelle Donlan, thank you so much for joining me, former Culture Secretary there. Very good faith debate. I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Thank you very much. Coming up after the break, US President Donald Trump today celebrated what he called a victory over woke in the US education sector. It's bringing an end to, quote, anti-Semitism and anti-Christian rhetoric at Ivy League universities. I'll be joined by an alumni of Brown's College who wants to speak out. He's furious and he's a Democrat celebrity. Let's see you come back after the break.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Quite a messy picture across Europe at the moment. Some places will have decent dry weather, but there is also some heavy thundery rain around. Temperatures across parts of Greece and Turkey not as high as they were to start the week, but nonetheless still pretty hot. And with that hot air, we are seeing some hefty showers. Could be some thunder also across parts of northern Italy and some fairly frequent showers across central parts of Spain. A few showery bursts across the Canary Islands as well. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather and more dry weather to come into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some lively weather in the forecast, but for many places tomorrow's going to be fine, dry and bright. So there'll be a few showers here and there and quite a brisk and fresh wind blowing. There's a ridge of high pressure trying to topple in. This weather front clearing away brought some heavy downpours across the south through the day, steadily pulling away now. So many places will become dry overnight, but that breeze increasing across the east, bringing more cloud and a few scattered showers here and across North Wales and northern Scotland, one or two coming into Northern Ireland too. But for many places, it will be dry, a little fresher than recent nights. Temperatures at 13, 14 towns and cities, but a little lower in the countryside. On to Friday, and as I said, by and large, dry and bright for the most part, but there will still be a few showers around. Not as many and not as heavy as the downpours we've seen today across the south. Generally here a sunny start, but a few showers coming into Wales, Northern Ireland early on. They should tend to fade away. Always the risk of showers coming in and the northwesterly breeze across the northwest of Scotland. And there's this zone of thicker cloud out in the North Sea. That is going to make for quite a grey day on some of these North Sea beaches over eastern England. And at times a little bit of drizzly rain moving in, and that breeze will make it feel pretty fresh here. Inland, we'll also see a few showers bubbling up, northwest England, the Midlands, perhaps into the southeast of England as well, but still pretty well scattered. And as I said, not the hefty downpours that we've seen today. Many places dry, bright with a bit of sunshine. Temperatures getting up into the high teens, low 20s. So about average for the time of year. Feeling a bit fresher perhaps than it has done. Certainly a fresh start to the weekend. But for quite a few of us, Saturday's a good looking day. Dry, sunny spells. Just the odd shower across eastern parts of England. Clouding over in the northwest later on. And that is a sign of a change. Feeling quite warm on Saturday afternoon. But some wet and very windy weather heading our way for Sunday and particularly Monday.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, just like week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Alex Armstrong. Just a quick comment here on Your Say. Arthur Dent says, in response to Michelle Donnellan, the former Culture Secretary, talking about virtual private networks and the online safety bill, Arthur Dent says, that's what a VPN can do. It's not how it works. And that is precisely my problem with it, Arthur. They don't understand the technology behind all these things they are legislating for. And there is no way Ofcom is going to be able to take on the big boys. Not a chance in heck. Anyway, moving on. US President Donald Trump today celebrated what he called a victory over woke in the US education sector. That's as Ivy League Brown University agreed a settlement with the administration that he says will bring an end to the wokeness and particularly anti-Semitism and anti-Christian rhetoric. The agreement calls for the university to make $50 million in payments to state workforce development programs and over a decade, and requires it to comply with the Trump administration's vision on transgender athletes and merit-based admissions policies. Well, fantastic to join me here is a Democrat commentator and alumni of Brown University, Kaivan Shroff. Trump is celebrating this as a massive victory for his agenda. He, of course, withheld state federal funding for many Ivy League universities over things that he would describe as woke, such as transgender athletes and other things. You aren't happy about this. Tell us why.
Well, look, when I went to Brown, I was taught to speak truth to power, to defend my ideas and argue for their principles. And we're seeing Brown do just the opposite here. Cave when they haven't violated any laws. No court has ordered them to do this, and they're voluntarily giving in at a time when, by the way, Donald Trump is incredibly weak in the states. He's losing support. His base is fractured over Epstein, over immigration, over him adding $4 trillion to the budget. So now is actually the perfect time for a billion-dollar institution like Brown with the prestige and the resources to fight back, and they chose to do the opposite.
But perhaps the reality is that isn't an opportune moment for them. Perhaps they don't have all the resources necessary to fight Donald Trump. But I would possibly take issue. I mean, some of the things that the US Education Secretary is putting forward, like banning transgender athletes, for example, should men and women not play separately, as it makes the sport unfair?
Well, I think it has nothing to do with those specific policies, but rather the principle that an academic institution, instead of standing up for its rights and its free speech and its students, is choosing to cave to pressure and bullying from the Trump administration. Now, the joke over here is that Trump's upset that Barron couldn't get into an Ivy League school, so he's picked this fight. But I think much more seriously, right, this sets a tone that if you have $7 billion like Brown and you're making this decision, what does it say for the dozens of other schools that this administration is targeting? And I will say it's very disappointing here in a country that values free speech so much and talks about cancel culture and free speech and woke all the time. All those right-wingers who love to say free speech this and that, to say any ignorant racist thing they want, are silent at the federal government cracking down on and discriminating against and targeting institutions for their speech and their values.
Kaivan, we've seen scenes here in the United Kingdom, and of course, this is America, so I don't want to say that I know everything that's happening there, because I don't. But we have seen scenes in universities across America of, let's say, people who are very anti-Israeli, perhaps, and are blocking universities. As much as we want free speech to reign free in America, is it not a point to say, well, actually, this is just going to carry on and on and on? We cannot keep funding institutions that are going to be supportive of this, particularly if it makes, perhaps Jewish students feel unwelcome at their campuses. Is the president not perhaps right to step in and
try no credibility there? I mean, this is the president who incited an insurrection on our Capitol, and absolutely there's a line between protest and things that cross over to a crime that then is handled by law enforcement, and that's been the case across the country. Now, I will say, even more disturbing here is the idea that the entire Trump administration, right, has been weaponizing these federal agencies against not only the American people who speak out, but even these institutions. And you're losing folks like Joe Rogan, right, who was proud to endorse Trump, is now walking that back and saying, hey, they're trying to remove students for op-eds they don't like. That's what this is about. And that should really send chills to anyone, right, left, who values democracy here.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Kaivan, we're going to watch with a lot of intent here in the UK because I think we're only just a few years away from this sort of stuff potentially ourselves. Democrat commentator, a big celebrity online there, alumni of Brown University, Kaivan Trough. Thank you very much for joining me. Please do come back. After the break, I'll be joined by a pub landlady who has been a victim of lawless Britain. This is Farage with me, Alex Armstrong, of course, only on GB News.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Alex Armstrong. Now, to a shocking story out of Wales. A family of 10 allegedly dined and dashed at a popular pub, racking up a big bill. And guess what? Refusing to pay a penny beyond their drinks. Well, is this lawless Britain in action? I'm now joined by the landlady of the Greyhound Inn, Kelly Jolliffe. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me to tell me about this story. Perhaps just walk us through what happened.
Okay, so last Sunday, a table of 10 had booked. So we do have the names, we do have the contact details, but they booked, they came in, they had drinks, they had starters, all had mains. Halfway through the mains, the waiter went down to see if everything was okay. Then it started. So they were all, no, all the food is, I don't think I can swear. So
yes, please don't. Yeah. Thank you.
No, so the food's shocking, but they swore. Everything's shocking, but they swore. Not good enough. Everything's diabolical, but they swore. And so the waiter then said, I'll go and get the manager. And then they turned around and said, when we finished.
You're
then
kidding me?
No. So then they proceeded to finish all of their meals. Then they beckoned the waiter over, and their whole attitude, the whole visit was entitlement. They beckoned the waiter over. Right, now we're ready to see the manager.
Absolutely shocking, Kelly. Absolutely.
So,
and then did they just run off after that, Kelly? Pretty much just shouting at the management, and then no.
No. So I then said, yeah, by all means, I've got the bill ready here. Come to the bar. If you've got something to say, you come to the bar, and then you say it to me instead of picking on my staff. So they refused to come to the bar. Then they started to walk out of the door in front of me, just looking at me the whole time. There's the receipt just there
on screen. Yeah.
Yeah, they just looking at me the whole time. They could see me. I was at the bar waiting for them with the card machine. Then when there were two left in the library where they were, I took the card machine down and I said, guys, you've got to pay for your meals. You ate it all. And they went, we're not paying. We've paid for the drinks, and walked out. They walked down my path into the car park. It was as if nothing had happened. They all were saying goodbye. It wasn't a traditional dine and dash. It was a blatant, arrogant disrespect for what we're trying to do here. Yes, and we are always, and then a couple of my guys who are really quite big built, they went out, not to intimidate, but to back me up. And some of the guests fronted them up. And luckily, my guys are more professional, so they didn't retaliate. All they said was, "Guys, you're an embarrassment. Yeah, just Kelly, pay the bill."
I'm sorry to cut you off because we're running out of time, but please come back on and to finish off this story with us. I'm so sorry you've been a victim of lawless Britain, and I hope you get your money back. So please don't stop until you do, because you shouldn't be treated like that. No one should be across our great country. Thank you very much. Kelly Jolliffe there from the Greyhound Inn, landlady of the pub there. I would love to bring in Jacob here. Jacob, you've got a fantastic show lined up coming up today. What have you got for us?
We've got an excellent lineup. We've got Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire and the Michael Knowles Show to talk about J.D. Vance, the American Vice President, who says Europe's committing suicide by allowing this endless migration. And what's interesting is that he can show what the US administration has done. So illegal entrants across the Mexican border into the US have basically stopped.
Zero.
It's really phenomenal, yes. So that's my main story, and then lots of other exciting things.
Can't wait. We'll be there watching it, of course. Stay tuned for Jacob Rees-Mogg. We'll see you after the weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some lively weather in the forecast, but for many places tomorrow's going to be fine, dry and bright. So there'll be a few showers here and there and quite a brisk and fresh wind blowing. There's a ridge of high pressure trying to topple in. This weather front clearing away brought some heavy downpours across the south through the day, steadily pulling away now. So many places will become dry overnight, but that breeze increasing across the east, bringing more cloud and a few scattered showers here and across North Wales and northern Scotland, one or two coming into Northern Ireland too. But for many places, it will be dry, a little fresher than recent nights. Temperatures at 13, 14 towns and cities, but a little lower in the countryside. On to Friday, and as I said, by and large, dry and bright for the most part, but there will still be a few showers around. Not as many and not as heavy as the downpours we've seen today across the south. Generally here a sunny start, but a few showers coming into Wales, Northern Ireland early on. They should tend to fade away. Always the risk of showers coming in and the northwesterly breeze across the northwest of Scotland. And there's this zone of thicker cloud out in the North Sea. That is going to make for quite a grey day on some of these North Sea beaches over eastern England. And at times a little bit of drizzly rain moving in, and that breeze will make it feel pretty fresh here. Inland, we'll also see a few showers bubbling up, northwest England, the Midlands, perhaps into the southeast of England as well, but still pretty well scattered, and as I said, not the hefty downpours that we've seen today. Many places dry, bright with a bit of sunshine. Temperatures getting up into the high teens, low 20s. So about average for the time of year. Feeling a bit fresher perhaps than it has done. Certainly a fresh start to the weekend. But for quite a few of us, Saturday's a good-looking day. Dry, sunny spells. Just the odd shower across eastern parts of England. Clouding over in the northwest later on. And that is a sign of a change. Feeling quite warm on Saturday afternoon. But some wet and very windy weather heading our way for Sunday and particularly Monday.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win big, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? The holiday of a lifetime? Or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? Lines close on the 1st of August, so make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop